does the picture look so good?
Hey, how's it going? This is Joe and Tell. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Sirui 50mm anamorphic lens. I'm going to be testing it on my Zcam E2, and I'm going to let you know what I think about it. So my first video I've ever made was actually of a Moment lens, and I tested out their wide angle and their telephoto, and I liked the wide angle but didn't like the telephoto too much, so I ended up taking a look at the Sirui offerings. Anyway, long story short, I tested out the Sirui and it was just way better than the Moment lens, and a bunch of people ended up buying that lens because of that video. So I reached out to Sirui after I found out that they had this anamorphic lens to let them know that I was interested. They said okay, and so here I am. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I'm mostly reviewing audio products, but you also know that I'm into videography. I want to make sure that my videos are as high quality as possible, and so that's what this is about. Let me just quickly run down some quick specs for you. This is a 50mm F1.8. Now the 50mm part is not exactly the same as the spherical equivalent, and so I'll get into that in a bit. This does have 10 aperture blades, which means that it doesn't turn into a stop sign when you start stopping it down. It still retains a smooth look. Not exactly a circle, because as you know with anamorphics, it's not a circle. The bokeh is not circular, it's more oval shaped, and that's what this gives you as well. Another aspect of an anamorphic lens that people like is that it flares, and this definitely does that. There's a blue flare, and it's visible in some of these shots here. This has a 1.33x squeeze factor, and it also has a 67mm filter thread, which is useful to me because I'm using a 72mm ND filter for my Sigma 18-35, and I use the same size on my Tokina wide angle lens, so I can use the same filter and it works right here on this one too. So as I was saying earlier, it says 50mm here on the lens, but it doesn't equate to a 50mm lens that I'm used to using if I was to look at a spherical lens. Because this is anamorphic, you kind of have to convert that because it's squeezing the image, and so it's not exactly the same. I ended up busting out a ruler and trying out my 42.5mm lens, and then the Sigma 18-35 in the widest setting at 35, and I found out that it was somewhere in between those two. I did a whole, I made a graph. I figured it was going to be linear, so try to figure that out. Ended up just going to IndieGoGo, and it says it right there that it's equivalent to a 37.5mm spherical lens. Now, I'm using this on a micro four thirds, which means it has a 2x crop factor, so that's equivalent to about a 75mm full frame equivalent. Minimum focus distance on this, I'm sure I could have looked that up, but I measured it myself and it came out to about 34 inches from the sensor and 29 inches from the lens, which is pretty good. It allows you to get, close-up shots and things like that, so not bad. Now, if you're new to shooting anamorphic like I am, then this is something that was interesting to me. I didn't know what aspect ratio I would end up with, and it really depends on what you start with. So if you were to shoot in the normal, 4K 16:9, you end up with something around 2.4-ish to 1 aspect ratio. So the Zcam E2 as well as some other micro four thirds cameras offer an anamorphic mode, which allows you to use the full 4:3 aspect ratio of the sensor. So if you start off with that, and if you include the 1.33x crop factor, then you actually end up with a normal 16:9 aspect ratio. And that's what I did for most of this. Right now, I'm actually recording this whole part on the Sirui. So I filmed a quick demo using the Zcam E2, and here are the settings that I had. I was shooting in 4:3 aspect ratio. Now the resolution on that was 3696 by 2772. If I'm shooting in regular 4K, that's 3840 by 2160, and you'll notice that this has less resolution horizontally, but a lot more resolution vertically. When you multiply that whole thing out, you end up with actually higher resolution than 4K, which is welcome. I'm always down for more resolution, more crispiness. Alright, so right now I'm here editing this video, and I forgot to mention that this lens does work on other Micro Four Thirds systems. If you're using a Blackmagic 4K, old Blackmagic, if you're using a GH4, GH5, GH5S, Olympus, I haven't forgotten about you. I know you guys make cameras too. Yeah, it works on all of those. If you're using a GH5, not an S, a GH5, it actually has an anamorphic mode. And what they say is that it's a 6K mode. So that's pretty cool. If you use an anamorphic like this one, you'll actually get 6K resolution because it's using the full sensor, the full 20 megapixel sensor. So that's pretty cool if you have a GH5, not a GH5S. I was shooting on a 23.97 timeline. I shot most of this in slow-mo at 60 frames per second. I was shooting at 180-degree shutter angle, and I was using ProRes Proxy. I could have used one of the higher ones, but I figured on YouTube the compression's gonna mess that all up anyway, so you wouldn't be able to tell. So Proxy it is. The footage you're gonna see right now is shot at f1.8, just like I'm on right now, and it was just us at my wife's family's house with our kids, her brother and his wife, making gingerbread houses at her family's house. So don't judge our gingerbread making skills. Keep in mind that I did not bring any video lights, anything like that. It was just the Zcam E2, tripod, and this Sirui Anamorphic lens. So I hope you enjoyed that little clip there. This lens here is going to be available in February of 2020 sometime. Right now they have an IndieGoGo. Their initial goal was 5,000, which doesn't seem like realistic. I'm pretty sure they were expecting more than that. Right now I think they're at about 617,000, so they're doing well. They have near somewhere close to 1,000 backers. But if you do want to back this and you want to get it as soon as it comes out, then I would suggest you take a look. I'm going to leave a link in the description to their IndieGoGo, and when it's finally released, if you're watching this sometime in February and you're interested in buying this, and if it's on Amazon, then I'll leave a link in the description to that as well. So my overall impressions of this thing, I would just say that the first thing I noticed was that it was sharp. I saw somebody else saying that it wasn't sharp, you know, at the larger apertures wide open, and I didn't find that was the case on my version. And here on this camera, it was sharp at f1.8. I like sharp lenses, so I'm used to my Sigma 18-35, which is kind of known to be a pretty sharp lens. Yeah, that's something I look for in lenses, and this might even be sharper than that. So it's very, very, very sharp. The build quality on this is solid. It feels like metal. It's not as heavy as something like the Sigma because it's not as huge, but it reminds me of maybe like the build quality of kind of like some of the Voigtlander lenses that I've used, maybe not quite as heavy. The focusing mechanism on here is nice, it's smooth, as is the aperture control, both the same, very smooth, and the focus has a long throw, which is useful if you want to get that exact focus. You want it to be spot on. Sometimes if it's too short of a throw, you really can't get it exactly where it needs to be. This one, I find it gives you very fine control. Flares, the flares look good to me. I mean, it's not something that I'm gonna use all the time, but if I see a flare here and there, hey, I'm cool with that. As far as the bokeh is concerned, I find that it was satisfying. It looked good to me. I wish it was more elongated. When I used to watch movies, I never knew why this effect happened, but you kind of see this transition where if they focus on something in the back to the front, it kind of looked like something shifted, like something weird happened. And now that I know they're using an anamorphic lens, that's actually what it was. It was going from like that cat eye, like that oval bokeh, and then when it focuses something in the front, they'd rack the focus, it would change shape. And so that's something I used to notice. I don't notice that as much here, although if I were to take off the lens, this is kind of the effect that I'm talking about here. Now, I found this focal length is a little bit hard to use because right now I'm using this and this is kind of like a small room and I have to have the camera really far. Now, if you're doing a lot of close-ups and you're able to move the camera further, then I don't think you'll have an issue with that. But, you know, for some of the stuff that I'm doing, maybe I would prefer a focal length that was, you know, a little bit wider. So far, I've found this very fun to shoot with. The fact that it's a wider angle of view, it kind of made me change some of the shots and recompose in a different way that I'm not used to. And that's really what you want to do, right? If you're trying to be creative, sometimes new tools will allow you to do things you've never done before. And that's what the Sirui lens has allowed me to do. And that's very cool. I don't really have any complaints. Maybe some things I would wish for. I would wish that it had a 2x squeeze, so it did have a more elongated oval shape to the bokeh. And then I would also wish that they had some wider lens options. You know, the typical lens equivalents in a spherical lens of, let's say, a 24mm full frame equivalent, 35, 50, and this one already is 75, so it kind of covers that 85mm range. Yeah, something like that. And I'm not sure about this, but you guys let me know, is it possible to have an anamorphic lens that can zoom in and out, or do they all have to be primed? I don't know. So if you know, leave a comment down below. If you have a Z-cam and you're interested in this, I would say, yeah, I think this is a pretty cool lens if you're going for anamorphic. You know that you probably have to spend a lot more or do some kind of like hack type of thing in order to get that anamorphic look. And so this is cool. It just works. It looks sharp, and I'm happy that I have it. So that's pretty much it. If you liked the video, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. And I want to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters. Thank you for supporting me and allowing me to do what I love to do here on YouTube. It's all thanks to you guys. If you're interested in becoming a patron, go to patreon.com/JoeandTell. Anyway, that's it. Take care. Bye-bye.